So a year and a half ago, when we were in Los Angeles, a lady came to me. She told me all about it. She told me about Chana. She told me about everything. And she wanted to know if it's idol worship and if she can do it or not. And my answer to her was as follows. There's only one truth. That truth is called Torah. There's only one God. He has a name, and we're not allowed to say his name. This truth that is called Torah was given by one God for all mankind. But this precious knowledge was given to one nation. These are the Jews. The story is very, very long, but when it started in the Garden of Eden. There was Adam, there was Eve, and there was a snake. The snake represents the evil inclination, the evil in the world. Before the snake was created and before Eve was created, there was only Adam, because God wanted to make a man in his image. Since there is only one God, there should be only one man. He took this man and he put him in a garden. You have to understand that all this, besides that it really happened, there's a mystical and metaphorical explanation behind it. When he put him in the Garden of Eden, he told him, you can eat from whatever you want. But you see these two trees there? The tree of knowledge and the tree of life. Do not eat from them. The second you're going to eat from them, you're going to die. The tree of life is one thing, and the tree of knowledge is another thing. Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. They didn't eat an apple like they show in books and stuff. It wasn't even an apple. It was the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge in the teachings of Kabbalah corresponds to good and evil. Everything in this world was created with two sides that oppose each other, good and evil, darkness, light, kosher, unkosher. That's how God created the world. Why he created the world like that? That's a 3-hour lecture. But the bottom line, why he created that, because it has to be a balance. Everything in the world has to be an even balance. And in order for me to recognize good, God had to create bad so I can will recognize the good. The problem was that the second that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, they brought down evil into the world. That's the snake that came into the Garden of Eden. The snake represents the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the devil, the Satan, all these names. But that's the snake that comes to confuse us. How did he confuse Adam and Eve? That he came to Eve and he told her, listen, you can touch the tree. See, God didn't tell you you're not allowed to touch the tree. Then he pushed her on the tree. And then he told her, you see, nothing happened. Then he said, look, you can eat from the tree. He basically deceived her. This is the point of the Yetzer Hara, to deceive you. From the second that we ate from the tree of knowledge, up until, first of all, Adam and Eve were thrown out of Gan Eden, because God said, if they're going to eat from the tree of life, then they're going to live forever. And since they brought down death and evil into the world, if they eat from the tree of life, then there will be evil and death for eternity. Therefore, I have to throw them out of the garden. Till Mashiach is going to come, we're out of the state of Gan Eden. Gan Eden, heaven, it means that I see and I get fed only from God. This is the state of heaven, that I see godliness. Now we're not in the state of heaven. We don't see godliness. Now we are stuck with a manifestation in this world that there's a tree of knowledge of good and bad. There's good in the world and there's bad in the world. The only problem right now is it's very hard to distinguish between the good and the bad. Now, a terrorist that blows himself up, that's obvious that it's bad. A person who helps another person with his money or with his time, that's obvious that it's good. So certain things are very obvious that are good or bad. But the majority of things are not obvious which are good or bad. So there comes the Torah. Now the Torah was given by God. All the other teachings, all the other theories, all the other methods, everything else that is not the Torah is a lie. It's a cheap imitation of the Torah. For thousands of years, people were trying to imitate the Torah. For thousands of years, people tried to prove that the Torah is not divine. The reality is it's the only book that is divine. There's no other thing that is not divine. New Testament, the Quran, Chinese, yin yang, all these things, they are all imitation of the Torah because they are all man-made. The only thing that is divine, that was given by God, is the Torah and only the Torah. And for thousands of years, since the Torah was given 3,300 years ago, people were trying to prove that the Torah is written by Moses, by Moshe, that it's man-made and it's not divine. Up until today, nobody was able to prove that the Torah is wrong. And on the contrary, there are thousands of proof that the Torah can only be divine and not be written by a human being. There are 80,000 types of the New Testament. 80,000, I'm not exaggerating. Go and look at it. Go look it up. Every version is different than the other. If you're looking at the New Testament, you'll see that it's full of discrepancies, full of contradictions. Nothing fits its other. And I'm just giving an example with the New Testament, but anything. The bottom line is that the only truth is only the Torah. There's no other truth but the Torah. Anyone that believes different is going to have to deal with an issue when he leaves this world. Anyone who thinks or believes that the Torah is not true, or that goes against the Torah, or tries to apply anything but the Torah, this is in one shape or a different way, type of an idol worship. Basically saying, I do not agree with the word of God, I'm coming up with my own theory. This is what's called in Judaism idol worship. Idol worship is not bowing to an idol. Idol worship is taking your own idea and thinking that that is the truth. And of course, it's much more to it. What I'm giving you now is a very short explanation of a very in-depth concept. Now, the Torah was given to us to teach us everything. The word Torah comes from the word in Hebrew, hora'ah, teaching. If I take anything in this world and I find a source to it in the Torah, it means that it is permitted. If I take anything in this world and I do not find a source for it in the Torah, it has nothing to do with Hasidus or Torah. Hasidus is a mystical part of the Torah. It's the mystical teachings of the Torah. If I cannot find a source for anything in the Torah, it's not true. Now here comes the problem. That this world was created with a concealment of the truth. That's why the word world in Hebrew is olam. Olam means a concealment, he'elem. The words in Hebrew have a meaning behind them. It's not like words in other languages that were just invented. Every word in Hebrew has a meaning to it because it's expressing its essence. So the word world, which is olam, expresses the essence that the world is concealed. What is it concealed from? It's concealed from the truth. The truth is God. Now, the more the concealment is thick, this is what's called in the Lashon, in the terminology of Kabbalah, what's called a tzimtzum, a contraction. The more the light of God, of the truth, is concealed, the stronger the concealment it is, the stronger the confusion it is. Which means some things are very obvious. To go and murder somebody, that's a very obvious thing that is bad. To go and assist somebody and to help them in need, that's very obvious that it's good. Now we'll go one level below that. Why is the difference between eating a sheep or a pig? A human mind will never understand why there's a difference between eating a goat, which is kosher, or a sheep that is kosher, or eating a pig. Your mind will never find the reason for that. That's where the Torah comes and tells you you're allowed to eat goats, sheep, deer, whatever, chickens. You're not allowed to eat pig and a camel and a lion. This is something that you cannot see with your own eyes, that there's a difference between good and bad. Therefore, you have the Torah to explain it to you. So there are different levels of what's obvious that is good and what's obvious that is not good. And some things are not obvious. That's where the Torah kicks in. Now there are such deep levels of concealment of this tzimtzumim, this contraction of the godly light, that the truth and the opposite of the truth are almost identical. that you really can barely see any difference between one to the other. This is called exile, or in Hebrew we call it galut, galus. We are in exile. Why? Because we do not see the reality how it is. Exile is not living in America or in Europe, that I'm exiled from my land. Exile is a state that I'm separated from my source. My source, and the only source, is God. There's no other sources. Any person that separates himself from his source is living a lie, is living a life of emptiness, and when he's going to be done in this 67 years of this world, he would feel the result of the separation of his source. It's both for Jews and non-Jews. This has nothing to do right now with religion, because God is the source of everything. In the eyes of God, a Jew, a non-Jew, and a dog is the same thing. It's a creation. One maybe is in a higher level than the other. One might have a different mission in the world. But in the level of the Creator, we are all equal. There's no difference between us. So when a person separates himself from the source, a non-Jew can separate himself from the source also the same that the Jew separates himself from the source. When you separate yourself from your source, you cut the lifeline, you are in exile. When I'm saying you, I'm not talking you in particular, I'm talking a person. When I separate myself from the truth, I live a life of exile, of galut. Now the problem here is that right now, in the state of the world, the darkness of the exile is so thick and confusing that you cannot see in an obvious way what's truth and what's not truth. To tell the distinction between murder and charity, that's obvious. To tell the difference between a kosher animal and a non-kosher animal, you can't. You need a book for that. But to come and tell the difference between the truth that comes from the source, from the master of the universe, which is God, that was instructed by his book called the Torah, the Bible, and to tell the difference that comes from something from the complete opposite, it looks so the same, so equal, that it's so confusing that one easily falls for the mistake of this deception of the snake. This is the whole concept of the snake in the Garden of Eden. It's not a little spaghetti that was roaming the floor like a snake, what you picturing a rattlesnake. That's not the snake. The snake is the evil inclination. The snake is the one, the source that comes to move you away from the source and to create a distortion that you don't see the difference between good and bad. That's the snake. Now, since we are blind in this world, some things are obvious. 99% of things are not obvious. Therefore, we have to turn to the manual of the source. That is called the Torah. Again, the Torah comes to tell you exactly what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Any person that invents a theory pulls himself away from the source. In our generation right now, unfortunately, 99.9% of the population of the world are operating on their own theories. Christianity, Muslim, Hindu, all these things. It's a theory of somebody that invented something based on their theory, on what they want to think of. This is the ultimate idol worship. Because I am not following the laws of the creator of the world. Now this deception is going to come in such a refined line that you don't see the difference. What's truth or what's not truth? So you're asking a question. What is the difference if I listen to Alon Anava that had a near-death experience, or if I listen to a Hindu that had a near-death experience? What is the difference if I'm listening to A, about their theory, or B, about their theory? Because we're not in a position of evaluating anything. That's why we have the Torah. And even in the world of the Torah, there are distortions, because people come and distort the Torah. People come and distort the Torah even in our day. So people come and find all sorts of loopholes, and they're saying, oh, I'm allowed to do this, I'm allowed to do that. The problem in our generation, that a fraction of the rabbis are willing to say the truth how it is. Because they want to be politically correct, because they don't want to hurt their congregation, because it's all about fame, money, power. So they don't say the truth to their face. Very small amount of rabbis, the real rabbis, will tell you the truth to the face because that's how it is. They don't sugarcoat things, they don't distort things, they tell you, that's how it is. You're not allowed to drive on Shabbat. Me, you want to drive, that's your problem. You're not allowed to eat this animal. You're not allowed to be with your husband when you're not pure. They tell you the truth to the face. And any rabbi that comes and distorts and sugarcoat things, unfortunately, they're not going in the real path of the Torah, because that's not the right way. In my case, I don't sugarcoat things to anyone because I'm not running a popularity test, and I'm not looking for friends. I have enough friends, and even if I don't have friends, I don't need friends. I need to tell the truth as it is. And if I'm going to come to a person and tell him the truth, and I'll just sugarcoat it with all sorts of screens to make sure that it sounds nicer because he's going to accept it, then I'm lying to him. And you know who's going to set the consequences? Me. Because I'm going to be judged for that when I go up to the heavens, and they're going to tell me, why did you lie to that person? Why didn't you tell that person that he's permitted to do this and not permitted to do that? Therefore, you are responsible for that. So I'm not taking any responsibility here. I'm telling people exactly what it is. That's already in their hands to do what they want. The reality is, and to make a very long story short, is that in our state of the world right now, the world is in such exile that the darkness, the opposite of light, God is represented by light. That's why in Kabbalah, God is called light. Because light is something positive. It's something that enlightens. It's something that illuminates. The opposite of light is darkness. And darkness will manifest into physical darkness, and darkness can also manifest into evil things and things that you don't see things correct. So you deal with people, and they can put on a smile on their face, and they can, tell you whatever you want to hear, and then they will fraud you behind your back. So to distinguish between good and bad is extremely hard, because the position where the world is right now is such thick darkness that such big and deep exile that the darkness is triple, quadruple thick, and you can't see it. So everything is very, very confusing, and one thing would look like the truth, and it will end up being the complete opposite of the truth. And one thing is going to look like that it's good, and it's completely the opposite of good. And one example out of millions is, look at the nutrition in the world right now, in our generation. You go on to the supermarket, and you'll find products that it will tell you, very healthy, 0 fat, no sugar added. This is all fraud. Now, why do you believe it? Because you see a stamp on a box, and you believe it. And inside of it, it's all junk. It's chemicals. It's fake tastes. It's GMO. It's MSG. It's all these things. Now, why do you believe? Because this is a state of exile. You cannot see between the good and the bad. I'll give you another example. You can look at 2 apples right now. One apple was grown organically on an organic farm, and the other apple was grown on a non-organic farm that was sprayed with chemicals, that was treated the wrong way. On the outside, they look exactly the same. The inside is completely different. So the deception right now between good and bad is almost impossible to notice. Almost impossible. The only way to be guided in our generation, and in all generations, but in our generation especially, because we're in darkness, maybe you see light by the sun, but we are in complete darkness. The only thing that illuminates our way and our path is only the Torah. Only the Torah. Not 50% of the Torah, not 30% of the Torah, not 90% of the Torah, 100% of the Torah. So if a person follows the Torah 100%, he's connecting himself to the source. He's guided by the divine providence, Hashgacha Pratit. If he's not, then he's guided and controlled by the complete opposite of holiness, which is called in the Lashon of the Zohar, Sitra Acha, the other side of holiness, that will make everything look just as good as the original, but it's totally fake. Like you walk in New York on Canal Street, you have all the name brands. I don't even know the name of the name brands because it doesn't interest me. But you go down on Canal Street in New York, it's all the name brands, and it looks identical to the original. But it's not. It's fake. And this is this world. This is called in the terminology of the Zohar, Alma de Shikra, the world of lie. Everything here is a lie. Everything is decepted. It's deception. Everything here is covered by the force of evil of the other side of holiness. The only thing that illuminates your path, only the Torah. There's no other thing that illuminates your path but the Torah. The Torah is the only path. And I'm not saying it because I'm Jewish or because I'm Orthodox, because this is the only book that was given by the Master of the universe. There is no other book. You can go and search, and I'll save you the search. Thousands of years people are trying to find another thing, a duplication. There's no such a thing. The Torah was given on Mount Sinai. Not only the Jews were there, all the nations were there, and they saw it. That's one of the many reasons why there's anti-Semitism, because the non-Jews saw how we are getting it, and they didn't get it. Needless to say that first God came to all the nations and offered the Torah. They just didn't accept it. But the Torah was given to the Jews in order to operate in the world, but the rest of the nations saw everything. The rest of the nations also have to follow the Torah. We have 613 mitzvot, they have 7 mitzvot. In those 7 mitzvot, each one of them branches out to more mitzvot. So they have about 70 mitzvot that they have to do, non-Jews, and they have to follow the Torah. These people are called Bnei Noach, the sons of Noach. There's no such a thing as Christianity and Catholicism and Buddhism and all the rest of the inventions. It's a man-made invention. The only way is following the Torah. That's the only divine word of God. Anything that distorts it, that goes around it, it's considered idol worship. Idol worship is not bowing to an idol. Idol worship is removing myself from God. It's separating myself from the source. Now, I know I gave you a very long spiel here. I'm going to try to wrap it up and get to the point. In our generation, the concealment is so thick that you can barely see the truth. Barely. You can look at something and it looks the most good, best thing ever, and it's bad. One example out of many, a person will be depressed. He will go to a doctor. The doctor will subscribe to him a pill. A kid will have ADD, the doctor will subscribe to him a pill. On the surface, it looks like the pill did its job. The person is not depressed anymore. He's a little bit happy, he can function. The kid can sit down a little bit. But that's the lie. That's the deception. Because it works for half an hour, then the pill wears off, then you're back to the same state, double the amount of the depression, and you're hooked on a chemical now. So now you're also addicted to the chemical. And at some point, the dose doesn't cut it anymore. So you need another pill, and you need a different pill. Then you need double the dose, etc., etc. This is not dealing with the symptom. It's basically covering the symptom. This is the world of deception. This is the lie that makes us think that things that we do are working, but they actually don't. Another example is meditation. When a person meditates in a form of idol worship, and I'll give you one example out of many, it is known that when people meditate, they chant a certain name. They chant. I don't want to even say it, but they chant the name Om, and then they say it long, like they say it long. This is one of God's names. God has 72 names. These are holy names. We're not allowed to pronounce them. And when I pronounce that name and when I meditate on that name, I'm able to bring down a certain godly power into the world and actually do something with that power. And when these people meditate on that name and they chant the name, they actually bring down this godly power into the world. The only problem is that they're pulling down a light into the world. I told you, God is presented and explained and expressed by light. They're bringing down to the world a certain light, but there's no vessel to put the light in. The vessel can only be built by the instructions of the Master of the universe. You cannot invent anything. If I pull in a certain light into the world, and the vessel is too big or too small or doesn't fit, or the vessel is broken, the light will shatter. Now, sometimes I will do a certain act and I will build a huge vessel, and then the vessel is empty because there's no light in it. So these people who meditate and they chant this name of God, they're building a huge vessel because they're bringing down this godly power into the world. And the vessel gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But they're not putting any light into this vessel. And the result is a massive vessel that is empty. And this will result in the feeling of emptiness, which will manifest into depression, into low self-esteem, into suicidal, into so many things. That's why there's so many problems in this world, because the vessel is huge and it's completely empty. They're not satisfied. They'll never be satisfied. Nothing that they do will satisfy them. So on the surface, they are relaxed for 5 minutes when they meditate. But deeper than that, deep down inside, they're depressed. They're empty. Their life is empty. Relationships don't work. Jobs don't work. Nothing works because it's based on a huge empty space. So sometimes we build these huge vessels in this world and there's no lights to be placed in them. Sometimes you bring huge lights into this world, but there's no vessel to accept it. So the light shatters. That will result in even a greater disaster that people go crazy. Now the point is that every one of these acts, if they're not done according to how God instructs us, the immediate result might look good. But the eternal result and the result after is going to be a disaster because it was not done the right way. It's almost like building a building and not consulting with the engineer. And you say, I want to build this big structure. And they tell you, go and consult with the engineer. The engineer will calculate if it even can hold itself. And you say, I don't want to pay to the engineer. I'm smart enough. And let's build it. And you bring the contractor and you start building. And then the entire structure collapses after a year. Why? Because the foundation was not strong enough. And it was built without a foundation. And it was built not based on the right way that an engineer will calculate the weight of the materials and how big the structure is and how strong the land is and all the elements that an engineer knows in order to tell you this is how you should build it, that the structure will not collapse into pieces. So you go and do it without the engineer. So the first year the building is standing and you have a beautiful building. And then a year later it crushes and crumbles and breaks into pieces and you don't understand why. And when you go and you investigate why, you find out that the foundations were not built the right way or at all, because you didn't consult the engineer. So you might do something in this world. When I'm saying you, I'm not referring to you indirectly. I'm talking about you in general. When a person will do something in this world, if he's not consulting the engineer, if he's not looking into the Torah to see where it's coming from, on the surface, the power of deception, the snake, the lie, will come and make it appear like something is happening. A person will meditate and will meditate on names of God and will pull down different godly powers into the world. But it's done completely wrong. Then after the meditation, for 2 hours, the person is very relaxed, very centered. They feel fulfilled. It's like taking a Motrin when you have a headache or a toothache. So it works for an hour. It works for 2 hours. And then the painkiller, the effect passes, and the pain is back to where it started. So then you have to meditate again. Then you have to take the pill again. Then you have to do it double because it's not cutting it anymore. If a person gets hooked on medication, first he takes 200 milligrams, then he takes 400 milligrams, then he takes 600 milligrams, because the 400 milligrams don't cut it anymore. He has to double the quantity. A person will meditate now the wrong way, because there are ways to do it the right way. A person will meditate the wrong way. It will help the first time, but for a short period. And then a week later, he's already have to meditate twice the amount to fulfill the vessel that cannot hold, to sustain even the light. Now, it might, on the surface, in the beginning, seem like a solution, like the solution of headaches. You have a headache, you don't look to the source, you take a Tylenol. And then you get the headache again, you take a Tylenol again. But you didn't deal with the symptom, you just covered the problem. You know what a Tylenol does? It numbs the nerves. That is it. It doesn't deal with the symptom. And if you have a headache, it means that your body is telling you, hello, something's going on here. You're either dehydrated, maybe you're undernourished, maybe you're not sleeping enough, there's some poison in your blood, do something. But most people choose to take a Tylenol and to numb the pain. So the same thing is with everything. We sometimes come up with these theories that we think that is true because we see an actual result. But the result is a lie. And it will not hold for a while, and could sometimes very much be that the result will be positive in this world. It will sustain for a year, but it will be like a plaster, like a pill, like a Tylenol. But in the spiritual level and in the long run, the disaster is going to be 10 times more. Now I can go on this topic more and more and more. The point is that one has to distinguish between the truth and the lie, and not when it's obvious, like to kill or to do charity, when it's not obvious. So when something is very not obvious, you turn to the source, and you turn to the source, to the right people that can actually explain to you what it says in the source. Because if you will open the Torah, or like most people, they're not going to understand so much what the Torah says. People learn for 50, 60 years to understand the depth of the Torah. So if you don't know the code of law, so you go to a lawyer. If you, chas v'shalom, have an issue with the law, you don't try to fix it yourself. You hire a lawyer because he knows the law. So you have to go to the right source that knows how to read the code of law and explain to you what the Torah tells you. And unfortunately, in our generation, I can say it with great sadness, that 50% of the people who teach Torah, they will not tell you the 100% truth, because there's some type of motive behind it. That's why, unfortunately, a lot of the rabbis in our generation will not tell you the truth to the face, because they want to make sure that you don't leave the congregation, or they want to make sure that you don't stop your donations, or they want to make sure that you don't pull out your kids from their school, or whatever. They want to have a big congregation that everybody will say, wow, he's such an amazing rabbi. Very few people are willing to tell you the truth to the face and tell you, I'm sorry, this is the truth. You deal with it whatever you want to do with it. You deal with it however you want to deal with it. But that's the truth. So you need to find the person, the right person, that will tell you this is the truth. And it's not the right way of saying, oh, God will guide me. Because God helps those who help themselves. You have to make a kli, a vessel, in order to get God's guidance. The only way to get this vessel is to follow the Torah and mitzvahs. 100%, not 50%. When you're 50%, that means you're ascending, you're taking off like an airplane. You still didn't get to the altitude where you're gliding. There's not other way but keeping the Torah 100%. There's no such a thing as keeping the Torah 20%. There's no such a thing. There's only 100%. Now I know, okay, some things are harder, some things are easier. We have a Yetzer Hara, we have our evil inclination. Sometimes I become a Baal Tshuva, it takes me 10 years just to climb. All this is understandable and acceptable. But a person cannot live in their mind by saying, okay, I'm eating kosher, and I do Kiddush on Shabbat, and I give charity once a year, that's it. That's my 30%, and this is it, and I don't believe in the rest. One has to be 100% following the Torah in order to be a worthy vessel to accept God's guidance, and then God sends you His messengers and His knowledge and His signs, etc., etc. The problem is that we get many different signs, and we interpret it how we think the sign is. And here is the problem, because 50% you interpret it right and you understand the sign, 50% you interpret it how you want to understand it. And we as human beings tend to distort things according to how we want it to sound. Because I don't want it to sound different than what I want it to sound, because then I'm not going to be satisfied with what I'm hearing. That's why a lot of people, they don't like what the Torah tells you. Because the Torah tells you cut and dry. You're not allowed to do that. Now, if it doesn't fit my desire, then I don't want to listen. Because it doesn't fit my schedule right now that I can't drive on Shabbat. And I don't like the fact that I can't be with any woman that I want because whatever desire I have, and I can only be with my wife. Now, this is one example out of many. I'm just telling you how people think that they don't agree with what the Torah tells them because it's not comfortable for them and it's not convenient for them. The point is that the Torah teaches you have to humble yourself and accept what the Torah tells you. So in our generation, the state of exile is so thick that it's almost impossible to see between the good and the bad. Now, you mentioned a couple times that, yes, there are gifted people that they got a certain gift. Here comes the two problems here. One problem is that you have to find out if they are really gifted, because the gift can only be given by Hashem. Another issue here is that sometimes the power or the gift will seem very, very special, but it's not coming from God. It's coming from the opposite side of godliness, the complete impurity. And it gets dressed in a very nice cover. That's why the Torah prohibits us to go to fortune tellers and to go to all these psychics and things. Why? Because one might say, they have a gift. He told me my future. He was right on the dot. But he pulled his power from impurity, from tum'ah, from sitra acha. He pulled his power because there are two chambers in the heavens. Chamber of purity and chamber of impurity. And I can pull energy from each one of these chambers. So a person can tap into sorcery and witchcraft and the dark side of the universe and pull information from that and pull powers from that. And we see it in the Torah many times. There's a story with Bilam, who was a great prophet, that he knew where in the heavens, in which chamber he can go in and pull powers, and he used it with witchcraft. And he was able to perform unbelievable miracles. So even the Torah tells us, yes, there are people that have very special powers, but where are they bringing it from? Are they bringing it from holiness, from the camp of God, or are they bringing it from the other side of holiness? Sometimes the people themselves, the person that is gifted, doesn't even know where he's getting his powers from. The point is that there's much more to talk about it, but to make a long story short, first one needs to distinguish where things are coming from. Are they coming from holiness or are they coming from unholiness? Once you already distinguish that, you said that some people are gifted. If a person is gifted, and I know many people that are gifted, they have a certain gift, they know something. It doesn't mean that I have that gift. It doesn't mean that I have to practice what that person is telling me. Maybe he knows how to do it. Now, I know it sounds a little bit extreme and many people are not going to accept what I say, but the fact that somebody performs, let's call it a miracle or something amazing, doesn't mean that it's the real thing. In many occasions, a person will behave a certain way or do a certain act, and it will appear unbelievable, helping and curing and changing the world. But again, if it's not done based on the code of the Torah, where is it coming from? What's the source for it? Who says that I'm allowed to do it? I know people that are very, very gifted, and they have a very amazing connection to God, and they know to bring down information, but it's based on the Torah. Now, I'm about to say something that probably most people are not going to like to hear, but if a person is performing all sorts of acts of miracles, or things that are beyond our understanding, and curing and healing people, and all sorts of things like this, but the person himself is not following the Torah 100%, this in itself is a proof that the power that person is getting is coming from impurity, from the other side of holiness. Because any person that can perform things that are beyond our understanding, like healing people, if it's not coming from the original source, it's coming from the other side, from the impurity. And if that person is connected to the source, by default, that person will be a Torah observant, by default, because they know that that's the source. And if it's a non-Jew, he will be 100% what's called a follower of Bnei Noach, following the laws of Noah. And directly declaring that it's all coming from God. So this is where you can see the fine line that if a Jew is performing these miracles and is not following the Torah, that in itself for you is a sign that the person is going against God, because if that person will know that these powers are coming from God, will follow the Torah 100%, not 50%. To do 50% or to do a few mitzvot because they see the truth in it, that doesn't mean that they're Torah observant. And I know many people that they go completely against God, but they still do certain mitzvot because they understand the spiritual power that they can generate from that thing. Like you mentioned, mikveh. Some people, they don't follow the Torah, but they understand the spiritual power they can generate by going into a mikveh. And they will take it like a thief. They will go and take this energy, this power, out of its source and use it to the wrong way. And when it manifests into this world, I'll give you one example out of millions. Look at the Palestinians and the Israelis. The Israelis are giving the Palestinians cement, so the Palestinians are taking the cement to build tunnels instead of building hospitals and libraries. And the Israelis are giving the Palestinians steel and metals to build buildings and structures and hospitals. They're taking the steel and they're making rockets to shoot it against us. So sometimes a person can dig into a certain source, pull out a certain godly power, a certain energy, in order to use it against God. Now, of course, there's the big question, why did God allow it to happen? That's another 3-hour lecture. The thing is that God ultimately doesn't necessarily allow things to happen. He created the world in a way that there's free choice. One can argue the same thing. Why did Pharaoh got punished when he put the Jews into slavery by drowning into the Red Sea? One might say, oh, God made him punish them. So yeah, God maybe allowed the Jews to be in exile, but when Pharaoh, as a human being, took it the extra step and added more, that already was not God's will. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, they know, for whatever reason and how, it doesn't matter, they know that certain mitzvot actually allows them to generate unbelievable spiritual powers. They just like a thief come, take the energy, and they don't use it to serve God. They use it to serve their own thing. Now, I'm not saying anything about anybody, but I can tell you, to make a long story short, and I'm sorry it became such a long answer, but anything that does not go in the light of the Torah, that in itself is a huge red light to blink in your brain of saying, wait a minute, maybe something is not kosher here. Because if it was 100% truth, it will have a connection to the Torah. If it doesn't have a connection to the Torah, or if the person that is teaching, preaching, acting, operating is not connected to the Torah, you have a very great chance that it's not coming from the source of purity, rather coming from the source of impurity. The more impurity in it, the more it would look real. The more deeper it brings this power of impurity from, the more it will actually do real things in this world, but it's a cover of a lie. Like I said before, the Zohar calls it the Alma de Shikra, the world of lie. It looks real good, but deep down inside, it's the ultimate opposite of good. So it might look like it's doing something, but it's not doing nothing. And the damage, the internal damage, is devastating. And the spiritual damage is devastating. So the point is that anything that is distorting the Torah, or goes against the Torah, or is not found in the Torah, or is not based on the Torah, it's not true. And one needs to pull away from that. That's the obvious, the simple thing. If you do not find a connection to what you're doing in the Torah, or it cannot be explained that it's connected to God, then it's the ultimate sheker. It's the ultimate lie. It's the ultimate deception that makes things look like they're doing something, but they're actually not. And on the surface, on the external part, it looks like it's performing and doing something, and in the internal part, the damage is almost irreversible. And you know when the person will notice the damage? Not in this world. When their soul leaves the body, after 120 years when they die, and they go to the world above, then they see the damage, and then the damage cannot be repaired because you cannot go back to your body and change it. So the point is that you have to always read between the lines. And it's not that I'm hiding things between the lines. A person has to make an analogy between the lines. And I can tell you that 95% of what's going on in our generation is a lie. Whether it's nutrition, whether it's almost all the world, the vaccination, it's a lie. It's a total lie. It doesn't do anything. It's proven that the vaccination does not do nothing. It's a lie. Everything is manifesting into this world into a lie, into anything. Everything is basically covered with a layer of deception, and the depth of it is emptiness. And when a person pulls his energy from that chamber, he will result in emptiness. That's why people are depressed. That's why people have such a low self-esteem that they will do things that are unbelievable. Why? Because inside, in their depth, they're 100% empty. Because they're pulling and they're building so much, these huge vessels, and they're empty because they don't know how to pull light in it. The only way to pull light in it is to bring light from the source of God. Sometimes you can bring light without a vessel. That's even worse, because then the light explodes. But when a person is building these vessels and eventually it's built on an air balloon, the result will be emptiness. That's why half the people in the world are depressed. Half the people in the world they have zero self-esteem, and all sorts of issues, laziness, suicidal, all these issues. And now who do they blame it? They blame it on the world. It's my wife's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's the economy's fault. It's not nobody's fault. It's your own fault. You are responsible for your own acts. And the most important thing to take from this is that God doesn't illuminate your way if you're not connected to Him. Like you said before, you want messengers and God will send you the messengers. That will only work if you channel yourself to the right source. If you channel yourself to the wrong station, you're not going to hear the music you like. You have to channel yourself to the source of life, which is God. And if you channel yourself to a different channel, then the energy, the influence that you're getting is coming from a complete wrong place. Nothing will work out. So it will manifest into your own world, into your emotions, sadness, depression, confusion, all these things, low self-esteem, all these things. Then it will manifest into relationships, bad relationship with a husband, bad relationship with a mother, bad relationship with a kid. Then it will manifest into your daily life. That's health, that's sustenance, making money. Then you blame the economy, you blame the whatever, you blame Obama, you blame whoever you want to blame. You think Trump is going to make a difference. It has nothing to do with it. You're building empty worlds that are based on emptiness. And then the worlds collide. And then you don't understand why. So the worlds can be relationships, and the worlds can be a connection with your child. And the world, even the children are totally affected by what we do. So we see children that can't sit down in a class, and we think, he's a child, he has to run up on a tree. No! His neshama is disturbed. It's not at ease because he's not eating kosher and he's not keeping Shabbat and his parents are not keeping family purity and so many other things. It affects the soul. So the soul is troubled and uneased. So the child is becoming like that. Now, when I'm saying all this, I'm not directing it at you. Don't take take my words personally. I'm just giving you an analogy of what's going on. And really, what I want to give over to you is a 20-hour course, which Bezrat Hashem, maybe we should do that. The point is that the ultimate truth is only the Torah. And if I want to go in the path of God, is only the Torah. And anything that comes in my way that does not collaborate with the Torah is fake. And the most important thing to take from it is that if I don't follow the Torah, I might have some success stories in this life and some things might work in this world, but then I have to deal with all the junk that I created in this world when I go to the next world. And trust me, you do not want to deal with any junk that you created in this world in the world above. Trust me, you want to deal with everything here. So God has placed you already in the right path, that you understand that there's only truth in the Torah. Now you need to seek the truth between things and figure out that 90% of what is presented to you is fake, is covered with a layer of lie. And this is the whole concept of the tree of knowledge. This is what Kabbalah teaches, Sod Etz Hadat Tov V'Ra. The secret of tree of knowledge is good and bad. That's why the entire Torah is teaching us to sift between things. This is permitted, this is not permitted. This is kosher, this is not kosher. This is pure, this is not pure. That's the whole Torah. The whole Torah is teaching me how to distinguish between the truth and a lie. Very simple. And when I live my life according to the Torah, I'm walking on the path of truth and I will never fail. And God is going to be next to me. If I chas v'shalom put myself on the track, on a path of a lie, then Hashem says, okay, you're on your own, you do whatever you want. And then my life turns out to be a disaster. And then, like I told you, and I'm repeating it again, a life being disaster, it means financially things don't work, emotionally things don't work, relationships don't work, nothing works. And I'm running after my tail all day long. And what do? I do not turn to the source to solve the problem. I'm looking for bandages, for Motrins and Tylenols to ease the pain. So they're very, very temporary solutions. They're not real solutions. I don't deal with the symptom, rather I'm covering over the problem. So I'm looking for all sorts of loopholes. Because to keep Shabbat and family purity and kosher diet and pray and learn Torah and to follow all the mitzvahs is hard. So let me look for a loophole. Let me look for like something that will actually bring me the exact same result that I don't have to go out of my comfort zone. And then our human nature is to look for all sorts of loopholes. And sometimes these loopholes, their source is so evil that it's covered in such a way that it makes it look like it's good. And we're like, wow, great, we found the cure for the universe. And I'm pulling the power from the other side of holiness, the place of impurity that comes to oppose godliness. And that's why we're still in exile. And when Mashiach is going to come very soon, we're not going to have it anymore. We're going to see the truth exactly how it is. And when I'm saying we, it's we as Jews, we as all the people in the world, all the nations, and even animals. It says that when Mashiach is going to come, even animals are going to look and see Hashem. So the point is to only take your information from the Holy Torah that was given by God and to follow that. And when you follow that, you're bound to success. And if you do not follow the path of the Torah, you are cooking a recipe of a disaster and failure.